Hello, everyone. This is Mike from Dimensional Walking. And today I want to talk about something in the Salt Lake City area. We're going to call this episode UFOs and Other Paranormal. What's happening in Salt Lake City, the area, besides the obvious. So, so I lived in Salt Lake City area for probably 4 years. Between two times I stayed there. Both times I did logistics work, once for the 2002 Olympics, and the other was for some other large companies several years later in the Salt Lake City area. So I've always felt a bit strange and uncomfortable in the Valley area while I lived there. And that strangeness and anxiety, I guess, faded as I drove from Salt Lake City up into Park City. And that was a route that I took frequently over my 4 years. The Mormons apparently knew that this was a very special sacred place. Or maybe it was just the end of their caravan of pioneers as they drove from Missouri out here to Utah. So it's an amazing, beautiful place, Utah in general. But this particular area, I think, is an area that has a high energy convergence zone. And because of that, there's all this kind of paranormal, UFO, strange activity that goes on. And there's probably, I kind of wrote down 6 reasons why I believe this is happening. And the first reason is there's a lot of these very large caverns that are underneath the valley and Salt Lake City itself. And actually, some of them, from stories I've heard from people, from witnesses, actually seem to have areas where they come out actually into or go up against underground parking areas in the city of Salt Lake City. And there's been people that have seen kind of strange entities passing through these parking lots and parking areas. And all these things I'm going to kind of mention to you. I've done bits and pieces of it throughout other videos that Rainbow and I have done over the last few years, and you can see them on our channel. But anyways, that's one thing. And then there's been the Green Man sightings. And I'm not going to go into any detail on this, but these were sightings that happened just outside in the Wasatch Mountains area. Okay. Number 3, there's been these vortex events that have happened. I've talked to 2 people that had these, I call them vortex events, and they were on I-80 between Salt Lake City and Park City. And they were sightings of kind of, I guess they call them exotic animals that would be crossing or running next to them on this highway, which was pretty strange. Okay, next, deep humming and vibrating. And that happened in the bench area. For you that are not familiar with Salt Lake City, there's an area, it's kind of like, I would call it kind of like the foothills, kind of goes up. It's sort of where the University of Utah is, and there's a lot of really cool houses in this area. And it's kind of the benches because it's kind of like you drive and then you get to a little road, and then you drive up again and you get to another little road, and this goes on for about 4 or 5 different layers. And they all, if you looked at it, I guess from a distance, you would look like benches. And that's why they call it the benches. But anyways, there was always this humming kind of sound. I actually lived in the benches, and I could always feel kind of this humming, vibrating sound, and other people noticed it too in that area. Don't know what it was. I don't think they did either. Number 5, it's also, as you all know, a center of powerful religious beliefs, and that's why I call it a sacred place. That's where the Grand Temple or of the Mormon churches. And then, to top it off, the area underneath it is a long, unstable earthquake fault and it runs north and south right through the center of Salt Lake City. So earthquake faults, there's a lot of energy and a lot of things going on in there. So also mentioned something kind of fun, something that when I would drive between Salt Lake City and up, which is Parley's Canyon on I-80 to Park City, every so often I would notice at the corner of my eye something like, and this is through a canyon, so there's all kinds of mountains and rocks and stuff on the sides. I would see these things, and they look like little wee people or small entities or something kind of crawling on the side of the canyon. And a couple of my friends also saw them, and we always used to kid about it because I was looking on the internet one day when I was doing the Olympics, and for some reason I came across this, an article or something about this Zenith TV plant that made Zenith TVs years ago. And it eventually closed. They had to lay off all the people. And we always kidded that these were the people from the Zenith plant that had closed. And they were, homeless, and they were in these mountains, and they were living out there, and that's what we were always seeing. So we always used to call them the Zenith people. And I know it's probably just silliness, but it was quite interesting because we actually did see something. We don't know what it was. But anyways, that was a little sidebar comment, okay? Anyways, so I just want to talk to you about an incident that happened in the valley, kind of the South Valley, just south of Salt Lake City. A friend of mine who worked with me at the Olympics, the 2002 Olympics, he and a friend were coming home from a party in South Jordan. And they were driving towards Lehigh, which is a community, I guess a suburb, we'll talk about it, south of Salt Lake City. Anyways, they were driving down this road. It was about, I think he even gave me a date, March 5th, about 2:30 in the morning. And they were driving down the road, and suddenly, and I must mention it was snowing very heavily, actually, about a quarter-mile visibility. And he said it varied from, maybe a half mile to a quarter mile. And they were driving on a road called, and whoever, if any of you are from that Salt Lake City area, you know what the road I'm going to tell you, it's Redwood Road. It kind of goes in that area, and it's a fairly well-traveled road. So they were coming home on Redwood Road, and they were in an area where there's a place called Camp William Military Base, okay? And that right there at the base, you turn on a road called 10400 North. And it's kind of a country road and has a narrow bridge across. And they were slowing down because of the simple fact it was slippery. And as soon as they got over the bridge, suddenly, I don't want to say all hell broke loose, but what happened was the whole sky lit up. And they said it lit up for at least a mile wide and probably at least almost, they thought, a mile long, an area. And it was the strangest light. It was blue. And at first they said, well, maybe it's a helicopter or something. But then they said, nah, pretty impossible. This is pretty bad weather. Visibility was like a quarter mile. There's no way they're going to fly a helicopter in there in that type of weather. But anyways, the scope of the light was so tremendous. And the strangeness of the light was that it was like it was coming from some area 50 feet above their head and shooting up into the clouds, okay? It wasn't that it was coming from the ground. It wasn't coming from the sky down to the ground, etc. It was a very weird position where this light was coming from. And so anyways, and it covered a huge area. And they were shook. They said they've never seen anything like this. It was really strange. There was no sound at all. The only sound there was some wind, but that was just a normal sound. But there was no other sound at all. It was complete silence other than the wind. And so they were just shook. And they got out of their truck, They walked around a little bit, it stayed on, and then suddenly they got back in their truck and they were going to kind of drive back to where the lights started, and suddenly it went out. So they were profoundly affected by this, and they never forgot it, and they talked about it for years just between the two of them. They didn't tell anybody else, except for eventually they told me, because I guess they knew I was interested in this type of stuff. Now, there's a little bit more to the story. The guy that was with my friend a couple of years after that, he told my friend, whose name was Dennis, he told Dennis that he had had another incident in the same area. Not exactly the same place, but close by. Just so you know, in that area there was a power plant. It was a nuclear power plant. It was a coal-fired power plant. But it was quite large, and it supplied a lot of electricity to the valley. And so he said one day he was driving late at night, maybe not quite as late as the first incident, but he said after 11, and all of a sudden he looked towards the power plant. He drove by this power plant, and he saw what he couldn't believe was a huge UFO that was sitting over the power plant, and was what he said was sucking the energy out of the power plant. So he tried to get a little closer to it, and he said as soon as he seemed to get closer to it, it just blinked out, and it was gone. He said he didn't see it fly away, didn't see anything else, it just blanked out. And so I knew this guy. I finally got to know this guy, and I know he didn't drink. He was a Mormon, so he really didn't drink at all. And so he was a pretty solid witness on this. So anyways, it was pretty amazing. Both events were quite amazing. And that is just a few of the many events that I and Rainbow lived part of the time with me in Utah, and we experienced in the Utah area. And we write about it, and we also have done videos on the different things we did. We went to Skinwalker Ranch, of course. We saw giants. Rainbow saw giants that were underground, out in where the fossils are in the central part of the state. Of course, we did work out Dugaway. We did a lot of vortex photography out in the Dugaway, just to name a few things, because we did a whole bunch in 4 years in Utah. So anyways, let's see, what else do we have here? I think that's probably it for Utah right now. But like I say, it's a beautiful state, and that's about it. So life is short, dream long. Anyways, we'll see you. Bye-bye.